Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're building something that I'm genuinely excited about, and it's one of those things once you see it working, you're going to immediately start thinking about how you can use it in your own business. I built this knowledge base, and as you can see, it's very thorough, but there's a lot of information here, and sometimes it's hard to kind of know where to start. It's great information, but again, it can take a bit to actually find what you're looking for. And so I decided to build a RAG system. Again, RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. I know it sounds super technical, but by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what it means and how it works. So basically what I did was, I will show you real quick. Let's say I had a question. I can now simply come to this interface, this front end that I built, and I can ask my question. In fact, as a matter of fact, I'll just click on one of these example questions that are here. How do I authenticate with the API? Or let's do this. What time frame lengths are available? I'll go ahead and ask that question. And it gives the available time frame lengths. Now, this information is in here somewhere, and to be, oh yeah, so we see standard time frames. Yeah, so we have that, and I would have come here and started trying to dig around, try to find this information, but now I can just ask a question, and let's say I want to ask, can I export my extracts to S3, which is AWS? Yes, you can export complete extracts to an AWS S3 bucket using the export extract S3 mutation. And look, it actually gives me some additional information in there, which is super awesome. This information, I would have been, oh, where do I need to find this? That's somewhere down here. Okay. So yeah, the information is here, it's available, but having a way to quickly query stuff and get answers faster is something that's great, not just for external clients, but also for internal customer support people or the likes who may have a quick question and want to get an answer. Let's say I ask something completely random, like, what's our vacation policy? This is something that's not in documentation, and I would expect not to get an answer from this. Yeah, it says I don't have that information in our documentation. So the cool thing about this type of system is that it's only going to provide an answer using what's in the documents that you provided. So it doesn't make things up or go off script. And that's what makes this really useful for real business situations. You're getting answers that are grounded in the actual documentation or knowledge base or whatever it is that you've provided to the RAG system. So yeah, this front end I built to kind of match what you see. They kind of look similar, but I built this front end, and in the upcoming videos, I'll show you the back end and the workflow automation behind it using N8n, using SuperBase, and you'll see how all of this was built. So stick around for that, and I will see you in a minute. Let us get ready to start building. But before we do that, I just want to take a second to quickly explain one concept that's going to come through this come up throughout this video, and that's chunking. So when you have a document, let's say it's 20 pages long, you obviously don't want to store the entire thing as one big blob in your database, because if someone asks a very specific question and you hand them an entire 20-page document to the AI, it has to dig through a massive amount of information to find the relevant bit. And the answer quality will probably suffer, and it'll be slow. So instead, what we will do is break the document into smaller focused pieces. Each chunk will cover one topic, one concept, or one operation. That way, when someone asks a question, the system can pinpoint exactly the right chunks and give the AI just the relevant information that it needs. And this is where it gets interesting, because when we store these chunks in a database, we don't just store the text, we actually convert each chunk into a series of numbers, 1,536 numbers to be exact. And those represent the meaning of the text, not the words themselves, but what they mean. These numbers are called an embedding. Every single chunk gets exactly 1536 numbers, no matter how long or short the text is. A 3-word chunk and a 3-paragraph chunk both get 1536 numbers because those numbers aren't measuring length, they are encoding meaning. And why does this matter? Because when someone asks a question, we actually convert that question into 1536 numbers too. And then we compare those numbers to all the stored embeddings and find the ones that are closest in meaning. That's how the system finds relevant context without needing to match exact keywords. Pretty cool, right? So when someone asks, how much does it cost? And the system would find pricing related chunks, even if those chunks never use the phrase, how much does it cost? Okay, now we've got that all out of the way. Enough talking, enough chit chat. Let's jump into SuperBase and set up the database. All right, so first thing we're going to do is set up a new project and give it a name. So I already have a project set up here, the UG project. And then next up, we are going to enable vector search. This is what allows our database to search by meaning rather than just by matching keywords. Move that over there. All right, go to database and then extensions. So there's no way. I've actually already done this, so I'm just going to show you guys where to do it. So here's what you would search. So if you don't have it already, you would just type in vector to search and toggle this on, which I already have. So it's enabled. All right. So this is super important, just a preliminary step. And what we're doing here is basically installing a special capability in the database that lets it understand and compare those 1536 numbered embeddings we talked about. Without this, the database could only do like basic text matching. With it, we can do meaning-based search. So that piece is done. Next up, we need to create the table where all the document chunks are going to live. So we'll go to our SQL editor and paste in a code to do that, which I already have. This is basically just creating the table. And this is something that, honestly, if you're not comfortable doing this, you can create this manually, or you can actually talk to Claude or ChatGPT or something and just ask it how you'd create a table and to give you like the SQL to do that, and it'll do that. But and basically, like I said, what we're doing here is basically just creating a table with columns for the title of each chunk. And then next up, we're going to do a new query again. And let's grab the code. And what's happening here, this is the search function. So every time someone asks a question, this function, we're creating this, the function. So every time someone asks a question, this function is what actually goes into the database and finds the most relevant chunks. It takes the question's embedding, compares it to every stored chunk embedding, filters out anything that isn't similar enough, and returns the best matches ranked by how relevant they are. Just think of it like a search engine, but instead of matching words, basically matching meaning. All right, so here we are in SuperBase now, and first thing we're going to do is create the knowledge base table. So I have this SQL snippet that I'm going to just run here in the SQL editor right here. We're creating a table with the columns for the title of each chunk, the actual text content where it comes from, etc. belongs to, and then embedding, and then that embedding column is where those 1536 numbers are going to live. So we have gone ahead and created the table. It should be here. There we go. We have our empty table. Cool. And now we're going to go back to the SQL editor. And we are now going to create our search function. So we have a new query for this. And I'm just going to copy the function. I already have it written up. And don't let these intimidate you. I do not know how to write SQL, not well anyway. But again, you can literally talk to your LLM and describe what you want, and it can generate all of this for you. If you just kind of describe the process, say, I'm trying to set up a table in SuperBase and also get the function, um, the search function, and it can walk you through getting all the setup. So, or getting your SQL query. So I'll run that, you get another success. Okay, awesome. So now we have the function created. And what this function does, every time someone asks a question, this is what actually goes into the database and finds the most relevant chunks. It takes the question's embedding, compares it to every stored chunk embedding, filters out anything that isn't similar enough, and returns the best matches ranked by how relevant they are. So think of it basically like a search engine. Instead of matching keywords, it's actually matching meaning. All right, so SuperBase is done at this point. Our table is empty, but we will see it fill up later. But for now, we got our table. So we've done SuperBase. So next, let's go to N8n. And if you haven't used N8n before, it's a visual automation tool. You've seen me do builds in the past with this. If you're someone who's been on our channel, yeah, you basically it has no coding required. You connect blocks together to build workflows. So the first thing I want is to add a workflow node. And when I say a workflow node, I'm basically talking about these little basically talking about these little things. So each of these is a node. So if it'll follow like this path as we build it out, you'll see. And then just for the sake of tidiness, let's name this document ingestion. Or actually, this is really our trigger. Trigger node for ingestion. And then we can call this document ingestion demo. Okay. So I added the manual trigger. And then after that, the next thing we want to add is a code node. So I'll go there, type in code. And we want to choose code in JavaScript. And then let's rename this knowledge base chunks. So basically the input from the previous node that we made is going to feed into this, and then it's going to give us an output. And that's basically the path that we're going to follow. So basically what I'm going to do is delete everything in here, and then let me grab a copy of what is going to go into the code there. It's in JavaScript. And what we're doing here, what's happening here? Okay, let's get rid of this. All right, so I'm now pasting in my code. So this is a lot, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I did here. I went into Claude. I uploaded all the documents. I think they were 34 of them. And I basically asked Claude to chunk them for me. Yeah, so I had all the documentation from the knowledge base. I can actually show you the knowledge base, just so you can see what that looks like. So this was the knowledge base from the company where I work at. And basically, yeah, we had all these different documentations that it's all very well laid out. I had built this out, but still people have to come in here and go dig and find what they're looking for. Not necessarily always ideal, right? So that's how I came up with the thought process of actually like building this out. So I had all that documentation. I asked Claude to chunk it up, and that's really what it did here. We have everything chunked up into these JSON blobs, and each of these will be an embedding essentially. And so now that I have that added to the code node, this is essentially the context for our knowledge base. Each JSON block represents one chunk, one focused piece of information. The title is a human readable label, as you can see here. And then the content is actual text. And then the source tells us which document it came from. The category helps us organize things when the and then when the workflow runs, it processes each of these chunks one by one. So that's done. Next up, we are going to have our knowledge base, our code node, and then the next part of this is our HTTP request. And this is going to be the request to create the embeddings. And I'll explain exactly what will be happening here in a minute. But just give me a second. Okay. So let's just rename this HTTP request. Create embeddings. All right. So again, our input coming in from the knowledge base, from the code node. And this is where we are going to go ahead and there should be post. And then the URL for this should be, we'll use the OpenAI embeddings, predefined credential types. Show my OpenAI. If it was a new credential, you basically like create a new credential here and go through that process. But for the sake of time in today's video, we will assume that's already been done. Then we want to have the send body. We want that to be JSON. And we're going to use the fields below. And for our field names, I'm going to have model here. And then for the value, text embedding small. This is the name of the model that we will be using for the embeddings. I think they have a text embedding 3, maybe large or something. I think there's 2 different types of models, but this is the one that we'll be using, and this is good enough for our needs. Okay, I just think, what else do I have to do here? I think we have to add another body field. This one should be input. And then the value would be an expression. It should be content in this case, I believe. Okay, so just to kind of summarize before we move on to the next one, with this create embeddings node, what's happening here is for each chunk that basically comes out of the code node, this node is going to send the text content to OpenAI, ask it to convert it into those 1536 numbers, the embedding that represent the chunks meaning. This is the step that makes semantic search, which is what we're doing here, possible. Without this, we just have text sitting in a database with no way to search it by meaning. So now that that's done, let's move on to the next node, which is our HTTP request node. HTTP request node, and this one is going to be for store embedding in SuperBase. So just make sure I have this right. All right, so here we would post the URL. This is something that we get from SuperBase. Basically, it's in here in our settings. I believe you can find your URL. There it is. There's your project URL. So it's in your project settings, and then or in integrations, I should say. It's in your integrations, and then data API. So you would just take that, and then you would add this piece onto the back of it, right? This was a table we created, so we have that. And then for authentication, we would do generic. I'll do header auth here actually. Header auth, and then SuperBase. Okay, so again, similar. If you didn't have this set up already with your API key, you would get that from SuperBase. I didn't expose mine anywhere here. No, I didn't. So you would get your API key from SuperBase. Again, that's something I'm not necessarily going to go through here. If you need help with that, I'm happy to do that. But you can find out how to get your API keys from SuperBase and set up a credential here. And so once you have your SuperBase credential in there, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to send our headers. Use the fields below, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we need to put in here. So it's just basically the different fields for the well, after we put in our header, we're going to put in the different fields for our table. But so there should be content type there in our header, and then there should be application.json. And then I'm going to add another header, which is the prefer. And I'll explain all what I'm doing here shortly in a minute, but just want to, for the sake of time, kind of move things along a little bit. And then, okay, so we have our header configured. And then the next thing we're going to do is to configure the body. And this is where we're going to add in the different our different column names. So I have these already laid out here, so I'm just gonna copy those, paste them in. Title. What did I name my code node? So non-race chunks. I'll just go ahead and add in the rest of these. Don't mean to bore you with this, but it has to be done. And then we had content. Copy this and change it. Try and save us some time. Go. And we have source. So these just map to our columns from our table in SuperBase. We have what category? All right, almost there, guys. Hang with me. And then we have embedding. And I think that's the last one. Okay. So basically, just to summarize, what we're doing here is this node takes everything, the original chunk text plus the 1536 number embedding from OpenAI, and writes it as one row in our SuperBase table. So this is the moment where the knowledge base actually gets built. We're basically filling in like a filing cabinet, except instead of just text on a card, we're also filing a mathematical fingerprint of what that text means. So moment of truth now, when we hit run here to execute this workflow, it should all work. And that would be our first video, but just to see where we're at, make sure I'm not cheating. Here's our table. It's empty right now. And, you know, I don't know if I've ever run an N8n workflow and it execute successfully on the first go, but maybe today's the day. So let's go ahead and execute this. I'm gonna make sure everything is as expected. I probably did not name something correctly somewhere along the way. I'm just looking. Everything looks, I don't see any red anywhere. So that's good, but you know, these things happen and we'll see. Okay. Okay. I knew it. All right. Let's see what's going on with our node here. Bad request. All right. What's our error? Please submit an input. What is wrong with my parameters? Is there something wrong with this? Content. That's right. This is where you call in Claude. So if you don't have the Chrome extension for Claude, you should, but it's going to help me debug this. Again, like I said, I'm not a dev, I'm not an engineer, but Claude can help us debug this. Where is my error in my parameters that's causing this to fail? Oh, what is the error? Okay. Looks like I had a capital I there. See? Something so simple. Let's try running again now that we've corrected that and see if this works now. Hey, yeah. I just had a capital I instead of lowercase. So, guys, that's really, honestly, get the Claude extension. It can help you in so many ways. And now, there we go. See, it literally did it right in front of us. Our table refreshed. We now have, but I'm not seeing my numbers here. That's a bit disconcerting. Guys, I have two keyboards and I keep typing on the wrong one. Why is my embedding column in SuperBase? No. Please help troubleshoot. And it appears to not have come through from the N8n workflow. Let's actually see what's our output. Okay, so something happened here. You see, all these are empty. Did I? Okay, so this is broken. I wonder what I did wrong there. Let's see if I can debug this myself before I go. Oh, wrong expression. There we go. That's what that should be. So this is basically here. This is calling back to the code node, but this should actually call back to the last node, which is our, which is this one that we're coming from, this other HTTP request. So that's the issue. Because I was just copying and pasting. I was not paying attention to what I was doing. So let's go ahead and do it again. And all right, sweet. So everything's the same as you can see. These should be blank here. I believe this return minimal value is the reason that we should be seeing that as blank. That's to be expected. But now, okay, there we go. Now we have our embeddings. So it worked. So first step is done. Our ingestion process is complete. That took longer than I thought it needed to, but I think we are there now. And that is going to be pretty much the first video. And then in the next video, what we're going to end up doing is building the query portion of this. But now we have our table is populated, so we can actually go ahead and query this now, which is great. And in the part 2 video, we will go on to the next part. So glad we were able to get that resolved. I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for hanging out with me today. walking through this. As I said, it's going to be live and it's going to be raw, and there's going to be mistakes and things that I learned from, but I figured that we were able to figure that out. Just walking through this and troubleshoot a couple errors that we had, especially with this last node. So that was good to just debug it live and get through it. But I will see you in the part 2 of this video, and we'll build the query workflow. See ya.